Today, I'm going for my first run in the Hoka Clifton 6. 11.62 miles for the double today, run commuting to and from work. About 9 minutes 30 seconds per mile on average between the two runs, and about 142 beats per minute. Getting in my first runs in the Hoka Clifton 6. And I know I'm a little bit late to the shoe, so I apologize for that. I almost picked it up when it first initially released back in the summer. At the same time, I picked up the Carbon X, but I ended up passing on it. And I'm kind of glad that I did, because since then, they've released this black version, which I think actually looks really quite nice. But before I get any further into my thoughts on this shoe, I do want to go over disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that I bought with my own money, and no one's paying me to use the shoe or to make this video, and no one's going to get a chance to preview this footage before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. Now, with the disclosures out of the way, let's talk about the Hoka Clifton 6. Like I was saying, I think it is one of the better looking Cliftons that I've ever seen. And it's definitely one of the lighter Cliftons that I've ever seen. It feels certainly much lighter than the one last year. I picked up the one in terms of holding it in hand, the Clifton 5 last year, but I just didn't really like it. I never ended up buying one. I never ended up trying to review one. My only other experience in the Clifton series is in the Clifton 1 re-release. I jumped on the opportunity to try that shoe because I'd just been hearing so much about it, and I didn't get it. I didn't understand what was so great about the shoe. It just felt like a shoe. And I think that there's some historical context that's relevant or pertinent in terms of the nostalgia and the love for that shoe. But I'm coming at it from a different angle. I never experienced the Clifton 1 at the time the Clifton 1 was released. But I do have this guy, the Clifton 6. And I will say that I like this much more than I like the Clifton 1, at least the re-release version. The upper is much improved in the Clifton 6. Everything seems much more streamlined. It makes much more sense. This is one of the more subtle Hokas that I've ever seen, and though subtle and Hoka usually don't go together. But the way that I say that, or what I mean by that, is that it's subtle, but still very Hoka at the same time. And that's what I kind of love about this brand. Even though it's not usually to my liking or to my taste, they're still very much Hoka. They've been refining over the years and developing over the years in terms of the products that they are, and iterating on those products, but it's still always, at the end of the day, very much a Hoka, almost unmistakably so. You're never going to mistake whether or not someone's wearing a Hoka. But I love that about this brand, that they're staying very true to their roots. They have their brand identity, they love their brand identity, and they stay with it. Love that. The padding up on top is, I would say, in kind of the medium category. I was expecting something a lot more plush, especially with the way that they advertise the Clifton 6. Like, they have that marshmallow mascot or whatever it is. And so I always expected this shoe to have just like super plush everything, padding everywhere. That's not really the case. The tongue is just kind of more of a standard regular tongue. The padding around the ankle and heel collar is more just like regular padding. There's a little bit of extra padding right here on the part that might touch your Achilles. And in terms of the upper, it's nice and flexible, but I think also translates pretty well to these temperatures that I'm in now. Chicago's finally getting back to some seasonable temps, and so we're no longer like below the freezing point. We're above it now, and the upper is just right for that temperature. And I'm thinking it'll also do well even as the temperature starts to drop again as we get back towards winter running temps. So I'm looking forward to having this shoe at this time of year. But the main story isn't necessarily the upper, although I do think that they made great strides in making this an upper that fits just like a regular foot. But the midsole and the outsole are certainly where the story's at for this shoe. We've got all their compression EVA, I believe that's what they call it, but a very lightweight foam, and overall the shoe feels light. And what I mean by that is, compared to what this shoe looks like and what you might expect, it feels lighter than it looks. And there's just a ton of EVA in here. And I think what they do is with Hoka shoes is they make it so that your foot almost sits inside the EVA, so you're getting a little bit of kind of guide rail action along the shoe, also along the lateral sides, but you also have just a lot of cushion to land in and then push off from as you're running. The other thing that they implement is kind of their meta rocker design, or early stage meta rocker, I believe is how they call it. And so they've got a beveled heel on this side and it curls up on this side, so it kind of makes you want to get through your gait cycle or your foot strike very quickly. It's very subtle. Like if you felt any other shoes with carbon fiber plates in them, you kind of have already experienced that feeling already, where it almost feels like the shoe as you're standing is on the edge of like either a step or a curb, and it's just falling off. And so it really encourages that back of the foot to get picked up and get you picking up your leg into your next stride really quickly. It's very subtle in this, but it's definitely a feeling that I also notice. It's an unusual feeling at first. When you're walking around, it feels weird, but as you're running, it really works pretty well with my stride at the moment for the most part. And here's kind of where things get a little bit confusing for me in this shoe. As I put it on, I definitely felt like there was a lot more happening in the arch of the foot, or on this medial side of the foot, the part that's inward. And I was very concerned that it kind of reminded me analogously, not in the same way, but analogously to what Saucony does with a lot of its shoes, especially like the Convara, where they do stuff with the EVA where it's more dense on the medial side of the shoe to kind of sneak in a little hint of stability in the shoe. And I was worried, I was feeling that as I was walking around in the shoe initially. I didn't really feel like that was something that translated as I was running. And so between the two runs today, over 11 miles, I didn't feel like there was like stability like features in the shoe or anything like that. So that early concern, I haven't really run into that being an issue so far. Some of you might like that or want that. For me, I don't, and it usually ends up causing me a little bit of knee discomfort whenever that kind of thing is in there. So that was something that was a little bit different from what I was expecting. The other thing that's different than what I was expecting is that right now I'm low heart rate training, so lots of my miles, basically all my miles are recovery miles, and everything's very slow. So I feel like a lot of times I'm just shuffling my feet or running those long, slow distance type of runs. And you want more cushion and comfort for your steps. But I think this shoe really wants to be your daily trainer and not your high mileage shoe. And that's because it feels very different when you're trying to take this shoe very slow to me. And so I had kind of like two different, like a bipolar shoe experience. Sometimes the shoe felt really great when I was actually picking up my knees a little bit, like working with that meta rocker, and trying to go a little bit faster. That's when the shoe started to really feel good. I felt like the shoe and I were working really well together. I was figuring out what it wants me to do to really get the most out of it. But when I was running really slow paces or trying to keep my heart rate really, really low, it kind of made the shoe feel boxy. When I was fighting against the shoe, it kind of felt like, and maybe it's the marketing that's getting in my head a little bit in this analogy, but it kind of felt like I was running with a very comfortable box of tissues on my foot. And so it was like comfortable, but boxy at the same time. It was really like a weird feeling. So I don't think that this is like necessarily a high mileage shoe or your long, slow distance shoe that you only wear on those certain really tough days that are going to be just long slogs out there. I think it wants to be more of your daily trainer type of shoe that has a little bit more versatility and leans towards running your easy and moderate paces versus easy / recovery paces. So I'm a little bit confused by this shoe for now, but I definitely like it a lot more than that Clifton 1 re-release shoe that I run in before. And this is a shoe that I do anticipate that I'll be logging in at least 100 miles in this shoe. I do think it looks great. Very excited about this outsole pattern, especially with some of the winter weather that we've already had so far in Chicago. So hoping to get a better read on this. It's definitely one of those shoes where I need more than just one day of running in it to really get a feel for what this shoe is all about. So stay tuned for that. I'll be posting a 100-mile review, hopefully relatively soon, on this shoe. That's all I have to say about the Clifton 6. A lot of you guys have already been running in and logging in tons of miles in this shoe. So if you have any questions or comments about the shoe, feel free to leave them down in the comments. I'd love to talk to you guys more down there. Before I go for today, I want to remind you guys about the charity runner for this week. This week it's Gavin May, who's running in the Memphis Marathon weekend and raising money for St. Jude. I was happy to donate $70 to Gavin's fundraising efforts, and I'll post a link in the description in case you'd like to learn more. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video, and I will see you tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?